Okay, we're back, and we're getting to how I shaded this on this fake skin. Same drop system, black, darkest, lightest, second lightest, and then lightest. And I used the 11 curved mag to do this. That's the tube for it, and I use a plastic tube, and that's the needle. And this particular part, I was trying to show you guys something, but the camera really wouldn't let me be great. I was trying to show people how sometimes you look inside your tube, the needle could be turned a little bit. So you need to make sure that the needle is flat, resting on that tube that it's in. Because if you're using a mag needle and it's crooked, you can really fuck somebody up. And you can notice a little bit what I was trying to do if you look closely inside the tube, but it's kind of hard to see that I was trying to show you inside the tube because the camera kept focusing on my gloves. But I was just twisting it to show that you can twist that thing around and it could be wrong. But let's just get into the tattoo. That's what you guys are here for. So I always check my depth and see how far it's out. If I'm trying to get some tight corners, I leave it out about that far. If I'm not, I make it a little shorter. I just adjusted it. And I start with my lightest gray wash. Again, I have not used my darkest gray wash yet, and I have not used my dark yet. And it's going to be a while. This is about a 30-minute video. It's going to be a while before I even touch my darkest gray wash. So I'm shading in the direction of where the light is hitting or not hitting the surface. So I'm shading in the direction to create a highlight. You don't tattoo highlights, you create highlights. You don't tattoo shades, you create shades. So I'm shading around that circular shade with my lightest light. I'm shading through the finger with my lightest light to create a sense of depth, to create a reflex light, to create that my own sense of tenebrism through the direction that I'm shading in. If I was shading all over the place, it wouldn't make sense. But I'm shading in the direction I want that knuckle to turn. I'm shading in the direction that the shade would come around, from around the thumb. Get a little closer for you. So people ask, like, do you do circle shading or do you do whip shading? It depends on the tattoo. I do both. I do circle, I do whips, and I do like the same like packing shading. But I'm gonna show you the difference in doing both in a little bit, and I'm gonna show you the difference in the speed in which you do it. It's gonna be, I'm gonna just show it quickly because I feel like that's kind of too basic, and I think I can get really into detail with it if I showed you on a portrait, which is like an advanced way to do realism. But you can see, if you look closer, you can tell that I'm using my lightest light because the ink appears black and then it slowly starts to look like water as I tattoo it. And right here, you see I'm coloring over the nail. I'm coloring through because even though it's one of my lighter areas, most of your tattoo should be full. And I see a lot of incomplete shading. When I look at tattoos, like they'll leave like a lot of skin on the highlights. And honestly, if you look at some good tattoos, take a look, take my word for it. The lightest area is usually like really watery ink, or if it's not white, and if it's left blank, there's that tattoo is really really dark because that's how you use chiaroscuro. And if you don't know what chiaroscuro is, just read the comments. I'm pretty sure somebody will be like, explain chiaroscuro, or somebody explain it, because that's how people are. People are assholes in the comments these days. But it's basically like shading. It's basically like the relationship of light and shades. Did you learn in a basic drawing class? For those of you who think education is a scam. artists need educations. It's my door again. There I go, shading in a direction. It looks watery, doesn't it? Light is light. I'm gonna let you guys watch this for a little bit. Okay, so I dipped into my second darkest. Again, I still haven't used black. I still haven't used my darkest gray wash. And in fact, I'm not going to use my darkest gray wash until maybe another 10 minutes into this video. Because I cut this video up for you guys because this tattoo on this fake skin actually took like almost 2 hours. But I made it. I cut out a lot of the video so I can try to talk about what I felt like was most important. And here I'm shading with the stencil. There are areas in your tattoo where you just need, it's in a direction of where the shade should go, but there are areas in your stencil that you should make to say, fill this void or fill this area with this shade. Or so a lot of this is, the key to this part is dipping in both shades. Let me say that. So I'm in my second lightest gray wash, but I'm also dipping in between with the lightest. So it's like a shade in the middle of those two. So it can come to the lightest part, which is the color of the skin or the color of the fake skin. So again, I'm shading with that second darkest, and then when I get closer to the area that's light or it should be a little bit more watery, let's say that, I'll mix it in with the lightest gray wash. And that's how you can get away with not using so many ink caps and making so many shades. But also, you need those shades when you're doing portraits. I'm going to show you guys something about circles and whips. So this is a whip, and I'm doing it fast. Just moving really fast. I just want to show you the effect that it makes. And then I'm going to do a slower one. And I just want to show you that the slower you go, the smoother the shade will be. And this is still the fast one, though. Trying to get that camera to focus, sorry. So that's a fast whip. You see how it looks peppery at the top? Now that's me slowing down to get that whip in. So in some cases that pepper would actually work. You may need that to make a certain effect. Especially if you're into like doing like a lot of different effects when you tattoo. Not just basic stuff. And this is circle shading. So there's a difference between shading fast in circles. And then this would be me shading really slow in a circle. Well, slower. And again, the slower you go, the more opaque it'll be. So the more full it will be. So this is when the turtle wins the race. You see the slower one is darker and smoother. Yep, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. Now I'm in the same shade, which is the second. So it's not the lightest light and it's not the darkest gray wash, it's the one in the middle. And I'm going to go where I did the light one and combine it, like the value as I shade off of it with the lightest gray wash again to mix those two tones and make it smoother. So if that doesn't, it makes sense, I'm going to repeat what I said. I'm using that second darkest gray wash, not the darkest one. And I'm going in those areas where I use the lightest one. And the way I'm blending them together is by mixing those two inks, but coming back with the lightest one to smooth things out. I stayed in that area so long and I worked it so much with that second darkest one that it looks a little darker, but it's just really me going over it so much. That's what I just used. I created a line with the mag, but it's not a line because it's an edge. It's a curve. It's a part of the surface. So it goes back to that analogy I used in the other video. We're using round shaders. Is that there's not really a line there. There's an edge, like a wrinkle in the face, or a wrinkle in the eye, that you shouldn't use a liner for because it's not going to look smooth. It's not going to look natural. And you see how watery it looks. You can tell I'm still using that last gray wash. I think I'm mixing it with that second one right here, but still. But yeah, you can use that mag to create a line, but not a sharp line like the thumb or the fingers. A line like an edge, like in a knuckle or something. So again, I've yet to use the dark one, and I'm going through those highlighted areas with the softest gray wash because it still needs to be some color there because it's not a completely white area, not a completely white highlight. So your softer shades are used to smooth stuff out, not your darker shades. Going under those curves. I'm using the side of the mag right here. You can barely tell, but this is why I like curved mags because they don't abuse the skin that much. But I'm not pointing that needle directly on top of the person's skin. I'm like using the edge of it. Like if it was a box, I'm using the corner of it to get into those areas where I want to line that. Well, like I said, in the edge at. And now I'm using the whole every needle in the mag to do this. I was gonna try my reflex light with the mag, but I decided to do it with the round shader. You'll see me switch back to that a little later in the video. I got a close up for you guys so you can see like how I use the lightest shade to help me not lose my stencil, and it helped me keep my form. You'll see. And here you're gonna see me repeat. I said repeat. You're gonna see me repeat the process over and over again to get it smoother. So at first I used my second darkest wash, and now I'm going back to that lightest wash to smooth it out, or a mixture of both just to keep it really smooth. And again, I still have not used my darkest gray wash yet or my black yet. And there's going to be a reason for that, because it pops better when you use them last and you can't get them back. So I know I'm not tattooing on real skin, so it's staining a little bit, but you'll see what I mean. Now, if you look up to the area with the finger, the top knuckle, you see what that magnum did. What the magnum needle you did, it didn't create a line, it created a curve or edge. I know my needle is covering it up now, but right now I'm doing. Well, you can see it now. It's poking out. Right now I'm coloring the other three fingers completely with my second darkest gray wash. So I still haven't used my darkest gray wash. And the reason for me coloring these completely is because I need the lightest area of these to be dark. Why? Because they're in the background. So that means the lightest area of these particular fingers cannot be the same as the lightest area of what's closest to the light. Because if you were shining a light on something, it wouldn't get the same amount of light as the things behind it because they're further away in the darkness. So the pinky finger is kind of like, in layman's terms, in the darkness. And I'll exaggerate this just to give you an idea of what I mean. Actually, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to exaggerate it. The pinky finger is all the way in the darkness, and the thumb is a little bit in the light. So the surface that we're tatting on, the fake skin, is going to count as a highlight since it's like a white color. It's going to be used as a highlight since I'm not using white ink. But these areas are completely filled in with the second darkest gray wash. And it looks like I'm using my darkest gray wash now. Now the first go around with the darkest gray wash is going to be to see, like I used it with the lightest gray wash, is going to be to see how dark it is relative to what I'm tattooing. And that'll help me decide if I need to add one more drop of dark or if I need to dip it in with water. But again, I'm not going to use black until the end. So I'll wipe it to check, and it's fine. Keep it going. Just keep watching, you'll get what I'm going to. I would skip over this, but I want you to see this process. So, don't miss out. It's just 20 something minutes of your life. Learn something with it. And here, if you notice, that wash is getting almost too. It's dark, but it's not smooth. So I would smoothen it out with a shade that's a little bit lighter than it. When I was using the second darkest gray wash, I smoothed it out with my lightest. So now that I'm using my darkest gray wash, I'll smooth it out with the one a little lighter than that one. Okay, so I got a couple drops of ink to the top left. I did this on purpose so I can show you sometimes if you got like an ink on somebody's skin, you can actually just dip inside their ink on your skin and use it. Like it's some little trick I learned watching the DVD one day. But anyways, this is a shadow right here. Because if you look at your hand and you put your thumb in front of it and your index finger in front of it, if it's in front of your middle fingers and the other fingers, that means they're behind it. That means that they are not as far on the light. So that means there's a shadow in front of them. And I go dipping in that just to show you that when you run out of ink, sometimes you can use the ink. And the machine is not on when I do that. When I do that dip, the machine isn't on. I just did that because I learned it and I thought it was cool. But anyways, that finger, the ring finger, is behind the middle finger. So it's in the shadow, right? People forget about shadows. Sometimes they remember to shade, but they forget that stuff is like in a shadow. So the further I go back, the darker they get. So I think of shading with tattooing like glazing with painting, like layering with watercolor, or if you don't do either, if you draw, it's just like hatching with drawing, but not cross hatching, just hatching. And if you don't do any of those and you just want a tattoo, then think of shading like molding it into a layer of depth. Like you keep shading over it until it creates that form that you want it to look like. But you need to understand light and shadows to shade something correctly. Some people have a feel for it, they have an eye for it, and some people have to be taught it. So if you have a drawing book or you're on YouTube, like you are obviously, chiaroscuro is basically the rules of light and shading. And if you master that, you can master shading. Now I got my darkest dark and I'm coloring it in with the color of that pinky finger, which is the furthest away. Now, I haven't used my black yet, but I'm gonna definitely color this thing solid black because I wanted to exaggerate the video for you. Because I noticed that it didn't show like dark as it actually looked in person because this tattoo looked really dark in person. So I'm using my darkest gray wash for that pinky right now, but it's gonna switch. And those areas that you see that aren't smooth, I go in with a lighter shade and a few to tone those out also. And I know that this is just a bold area, but to take note of this, you have to shade slowly to get a smooth shade. This is a very, even though I'm not using black right now, this is going to get filled in very boldly because I'm going slow enough to fill that in. So I don't think you can finish a decent tattoo super fast. You have to slow it down to get those shades. So I'm just looking at areas where I need to go back in with the round shader, and I see some reflex areas. I see some highlight areas before I dip in this black. Some of these curves. I have the round shader, by the way. That's not a liner. Yeah, but those shades are a little touch of an add on with the round shader, make everything pop out a little more too. So think of round shading as ways to tattoo edges or to shade in tight spots. Or if you're doing like something simple that you need really dark, like lettering, you can get that with a round shader. The bigger the round shader, the bigger the letter, the bigger round shader you should use. Or like think of it as like a Chinese symbol. If you want to color it in, you don't want to use a mag, use a round shader because you can also get the corners. I actually do that. The next time you tattoo, see I'm using a round shader right here for the separation of the fingers because a liner would bring it too much to the front. But the round shader would create a shade to show that it's behind. But anyway, so the next time you tattoo like a Chinese symbol or something, like Arabic writing. Use a round shader to color it in and tell me if you see the difference. You'll definitely see the difference. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon. I'm gonna do a couple layers of black slowly so I can get that pinky all the way in the distance and get it super dark back there. The other fingers just have to be a little bit darker to make more sense. Yeah, I was using a round shader to get in those tight spots. So now I use the round shader to do my reflex lights, which is the light that bounces off of things. When a light hits something, it bounces off the shadows to create another light. So I'm doing a reflex shade to create a reflex light. Each shade to create light sometimes. And that small minor detail is going to do a lot for the picture. Let me get back in focus, sorry. And that's a reflex right there. It's like right on the tip. I'm leaving a little room for light. So again, just subscribe, man, and look out for the link I have. It'll either be downloadable or DVD or something about portraits. And thank you for watching.